Hey there, if you're watching this right now, it means I somehow actually got to making this video work out. I should note that, before this video begins, I intended not only to make this a suitable video for a school assignment, but also simultaneously use this as a personal video as a passion project, hence its length. As such, I should note that, for the sake of making things feel clearer, sources will be cited on screen like the example right here when used. I'm mostly doing this as it helps me refrain from saying, according to insert source here, every time I want to quote a source. And finally, I've put any links needed in the description for convenience. Now, let's begin. California. Oh, beautiful California. Personally, as someone who's lived here his whole life, I gotta admit, this place is pretty amazing. I love the weather, the food, the environment, the people, kinda. But you know what I don't love? Oh, wait, sorry, I need to get real. Okay, now that we're all set, let me explain a brief history about housing in California. Now you see, California has always had a complex population. Notably, the region was one of the most diverse in North America when it came to language, even before the Europeans discovered it. Of course, the Europeans eventually had to sink their teeth into the land, with the Spanish being the first to settle it, bringing in their own people, creating the sizable Spanish-speaking community that still remains today, as more than 25% of the population, or 8 million people, spoke Spanish in the year 2000. However, after changing hands a couple times, first being Mexican and then American after a certain little irrelevant conflict, the land eventually stuck as part of the United States. In fact, right in the wake of the Mexican-American War, the California Gold Rush began. Starting in 1848, this rush quite rapidly exploded California's population, resulting in the population to go from around 160,000 in the 1840s to a whopping estimate of about 300,000 people in the 1850s, creating the perfect conditions for California to become a state at the start of the decade. Though less relevant to the subject at hand today, it should be noted that this explosion was at the serious expense of the native population of California, with the population sadly declining from around 150,000 in 1845 to just around 30,000 in 1870. Staying on topic though, this population explosion gave birth to many major metropolitan areas we have today, like Sacramento, San Francisco, and Los Angeles, to name a few. This population growth lasted throughout the next century and beyond, creating a state that has the largest population in the nation with not enough housing to support it. Not even including the rest of the country. However, in the 1970s, just a whopping 50 years ago by the way, approximately 55%, more than half, of Californian households own their homes. Since then, nearly 4 times as many are renting, a stark contrast, especially considering how 58% of the population is burdened by rent. That meaning that they spend 30% or more of their income on rent. In other words, the housing situation in California in 2025 is, well, bleak to say the least. Wait. A bleak housing situation? In this year? Once again, the aforementioned housing market issue is a prevalent issue today. In fact, as of writing this, so around mid-March 2025, the issues involving the market are at the worst they've been for a while, with homelessness in California also seeing a serious spike as the state bears approximately a quarter of all homeless people in the US. The homelessness problem in California is made even worse, as, alongside high rent prices in a bad housing market, many who enter homeless shelters get stuck in them, waiting to find actual housing that doesn't come. The homeless population therefore ends up staying in these shelters, which are notorious for being corrupt and mismanaged, and therefore even less likely to be able to help fix California's housing issues. I should also note that being homeless in and of itself results in serious issues, as the majority of homeless people are seen as undesirable, with many considered drug addicts, even though only about 37% of homeless people actually are drug users. Meanwhile, for those who aren't homeless, things aren't exactly looking great either. The homeowner vacancy rate, or the percentage of houses for sale, in the US as a whole is at the lowest it's been since the late 1950s, which makes sense when you consider how housing prices are at the highest they've been, well, ever. California literally has the highest housing prices in the entirety of the United States, with median housing prices being multiple times larger than that of the United States itself. When these high prices combine with the aforementioned already existent burden of rent by more than half the population, it results in the problematic nature of the current housing market and the inability for people to be able to fix the problems at hand. Now, between the housing market's terrible pricing and a general lack of capability to actually buy a house for most people, I bet you're probably thinking, well, how do we fix this? So hear me out. The solution I have in mind for fixing the housing problem? A modest proposal, you might say. Quite simple, and possibly a bit dumb-sounding on paper. In order to help the housing crisis in California, and by proxy the homeless epidemic, the government must build more affordable housing for the people. Level with me here. If the government builds more housing, primarily dedicated to those currently in homeless shelters, more people will, by proxy, stop being homeless as a result, which, in turn, results in a slightly, but still notable, upgrade for employers. After all, most lower income jobs would probably rather hire someone with a house, or some kind of home, instead of somebody who, well, doesn't. Not to mention that these people will actually have a higher standard of living now that they're actually able to have a place that they call home. The mass production of housing, mostly via apartments, directly diminishes homelessness, as giving the ability for the people to live in their own personal space will grant them a crucial step towards rising out of poverty. That's not even mentioning the other effects government housing could do for the population of California as a whole, as after all there's a high demand for housing, and the supply needs to be filled somehow. After all, houses don't just spawn in like a video game character would. So who would build these houses? The construction workers, baby. As demand rises, so does the need for these workers and their companies, leading them directly towards profiting from the government as the houses are built, also creating more jobs as more workers are needed for the business's growth. Flipping back to our main focus, the population living in actually stable housing would heavily strengthen the economy as well, as, again, stability at home creates more opportunity to get jobs. And what happens when more people are able to get jobs? The economy gets bolstered further as the workforce grows. Hey, even the housing market itself would see a major change. After all, more housing provided by the government will directly lead to the market becoming less competitive as a result, as less people needing to buy houses will mean less demand, and of course, that itself leads to more supply growth. And if you've spent any time following along with a certain economics class, then you should probably know that when supply goes up, prices go down, baby! Yeah. However, as with all solutions, I should add that this solution here won't be as, well, utopian, I guess, as I put it. People are, well, people, and since we do live in an economy that can be manipulated for selfish needs, there are definitely ways this plan can be undermined. For example, assuming laws to enact government housing even pass in the first place, some construction companies could cut corners to try to further their profit. Or alternatively, corruption could strike just like with the homeless shelters today, where, again, many people don't get out of the shelters in part due to corruption. But of course, the best course of action to prevent corruption or greed from seeping into these sorts of programs would be via further legislation, which, looping around again, could be passed through the government just like any other housing laws passed already. And that, of course, is my solution as to how we should address the housing crisis in California. Again, no plan is perfect, and there's a fairly high likelihood that someone else has thought of something that might be more efficient. And even then, the housing market is something that should have different ideas on how to fix it. It's probably the biggest issue California has outside of homelessness. But if done right, the solution to the housing crisis could actually fix the homeless epidemic as well. This video and trying to create a solution for the issues here have definitely been a really cool experience for me. Researching the history behind California's population and learning the why behind its growth has honestly helped me learn a lot, especially since I went way beyond the original parameters of this assignment. Though that of course is on me, since I've been wanting to make a video essay like this for a pretty long while. Anyways, enough yapping. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you later.